Ever since I was a little boy, I was scrolling on my little iPad playing this game called Henry Stickmin. And I always wondered if it were possible to ever rob a bank or steal the Tunisian diamond in real life. But now that we're in the Big 26, I went ahead and figured out how realistic the game was to see if it was possible for an average Joe to survive and surpass as Henry. So, if you like this video, make sure to leave a like and comment about how I only have 2 videos on this channel. But before we begin, let me list off some rules that I have to bypass first to continue on to the next episode. On Rule 1, I have to get an ending no matter what the circumstance is. On Rule 2, other characters and nature itself will be its own conduct and not interrupt the run at all, unless some items are made by the military or the top hats and are not made by Gadget Gabe. On Rule 3, if the gameplay shows more than 3 unrealistic traits, then it's not going to be a possible run at all. But enough talking, let's begin at the prologue, where we get to see Henry in the middle of nowhere in either Arizona or New Mexico at this big old vault, which was considered as a bank at the start of the game. But banks don't typically spawn at random deserts, so the haul must be like at least a couple million or more, and in the game shows us at least 6 items, with the money bag being the most reliable. The shovel, the explosives, the teleporter, which we should probably track later, the laser cutter, the bulldozer, and the money bag. But let's first determine some things while we're here. You see, Henry is actually considered to be a 6-foot tall character, weighing at 110 pounds, but for the average Joe it's about 160 to 180 pounds. Without offending anyone else, an average human height tends to be 5'7" to a low or high basis, meaning that Henry himself is actually not that different. So if we scale that to the rest of the game, that means every character is either 5'9" to 6 foot. But let's be honest, that info would probably go over y'all's heads anyway because you're probably short. And that doesn't conclude much to the story anyway, so let's backtrack to the money bag itself, which seems to be the most realistic ending out of the whole plot, because using the bombs would tend to cost too much to handle and you would probably explode yourself. Using a wrecking ball would be impossible because of the area, the teleporter not making any sense at all, the shovel leading down to a gas main, which in US regulations is actually 18 to 24 inches deep, and would take 5 to 6 hours due to Henry just using a shovel, and the laser cutter just not being real as much as the teleporter. So after all the analyzing, we hide ourselves into the money bag, which is somehow tied from the inside of the bag by Henry, which is not really physically possible to do as a human, but we're gonna bypass that since it's our only ticket to the inside of the vault, as the driver picks us up and enters to the bank by our friend Winston Davis, which we then blame upon during the testimony as he got us stuffed into the bag instead. So now let's continue on to the next episode. After the failed robbery at the vault, we officially landed ourselves in a new spot called the Red Mesa Penitentiary, a prison somewhere located around Arizona or New Mexico, of a pot of dookie and 2 new guards named Rupert Price and Dave Pampa, who was then mistakenly judged upon after not checking a box we received with 6 new items that was supposed to save our future selves, but that doesn't matter right now. For the time being, the 6 new items that were brought to us was a file, a Gatorade bottle, the teleporter once again, a rocket launcher, a cell phone, and a drill. But for right now, we can easily say that the rocket launcher is clearly off the list due to the massive explosion it would create and the amount of noise that was sent right back to Henry, and the Gatorade bottle giving us fast-inducing superpowers, which then gives us cancer! But how about we just go with the basics and just use a simple file? Depending on which direction you go, one can be defying gravity, the other being high risk, high reward. But using the file would go badly because there would be security cameras all over the place, the guards checking your cell 24/7, and sawing away those bars would take literal hours, let alone days, plus giving a lot of noise which can bring a lot of attention. But let's subtract the things I just said and just went with escaping the file. Well, the first thing you would have to do is defend yourself from 2 guards coming right at you, pause, going through 2 more guards which would sound off the alarms, and using a plunger to scale down a 100-foot wall, making this scene very unrealistic. Using the teleporter once again would lead you to your death and leaving poor Jonas with a failed marksman exam, so sad, and just leaving us with the cell phone and the drill. But we would already know why the drill would fail, because it would create too much noise and would just take a long time to drill down. But let's say we just did it at nighttime. Well, this would happen. So now our only option left is the cell phone, being the most realistic out of all of them due to us just calling our attorney, which was surprisingly the best in the city, and leaving us off with the ending lawyered up. So now it's time to begin the next episode.
As the mayor, I hereby declare the Tunisian archaeological exhibit open.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
As we begin episode 2, it's only going to get a lot more difficult from here. Since the majority of the episode has some unrealistic changes in actions, bypassing this as an average Joe is going to be very interesting. So, we're going to have to use some alternatives instead, because some of the items Henry uses just do not make any sense at all. So, I'm going to have to list off some things I would do instead to steal the diamond. But let's begin the episode with the first two choices of either breaking in or sneaking silently. From this viewpoint, it also shows that this ain't some kind of bank or jewelry store, but instead a museum filled with illegal and undefined artifacts, which probably has like the Blade of Olympus or Walter White's blue crystal. It also shows that the Tunisian diamond is worth about $112 million, and with Henry trying to steal it, our best approach here is to not ram into the building head first, since the two guards could easily shoot us down, and tripping over some stairs is not a convenient way to go. But another thing I noticed throughout this choice was when Henry placed the diamond on his scooter and launched him across the room, like how Speed tried to kick a soccer ball, I wanted to see if this was actually realistic. So then I went online and did some careful research to see how much the diamond really weighed. So grab your pen and paper and let's get to calculating. Because on the internet I saw that the Tunisian diamond is about 3.2 feet tall and 3 feet wide. So if we measure that into inches, it would then be around 36 to 38 inches. Then I calculated both of them on the diamond calculator, which I got the answer of 994,941 grams. So if we put that into pounds, we can get the final conclusion that the Tunisian diamond weighs about 2,193 pounds, which makes this scene not totally fake and would at least weigh down or break the basket of the scooter. But after that deep analysis, let's instead try and focus our way back into the museum by sneaking in from the side of the building, where we encounter 6 new items to use from either going upwards or straight ahead. The items that Henry has here are the jumble hoppers, the gravity cap, the teleporter once again in the same spot, the shrink ray, the pickaxe, and the liquefier made by Gadget Gabe. But with the options we have, we can already eliminate a couple of them, like the hoppers since they don't reach the top of the building, the gravity cap not working right because you'll just end up on the moon, the shrink ray immediately killing you after being 50 feet up in the air while trying to turn small and getting eaten by a worm, and lastly the liquefier just not making any sense at all, which why would he make this? No, you're just pissing me off. What? Anyway, our last two options are the pickaxe and the teleporter. But this is when things start to bend reality, because the teleporter would be impossible to have since that kind of technology is not specifically listed in either the Top Hats nor the government. Not even Gadget Gabe stated that he made this item, so from that itself, we could not go upwards and it would just be unrealistic. But if we use the pickaxe instead, it's also the same scenario because if Minecraft Creeper just decides to show up, and since Henry doesn't have protection for gear, he would be immediately dead. So now that just leaves us with nothing to use. But due to Rule 1 existing, we would have to try to get an ending no matter what. So let's go ahead and use our instincts like we're in The Last of Us and use the one thing to get around. The garbage can! Which we can then use to grab the ladder from the side of the building and make it to the top of the museum. But since there's also a guard up here, we hide behind one of the big air vents and not making a single sound, giving us our next couple of choices. A penny, a tranquilizer, a falcon punch, and an invis pill. And with all the choices being reliable, I think using the penny would be the right choice anyway, because the guard could get distracted, and then we could perform like a little sneak attack like we're Jin Sakai, and choke his ass out. But now that we're in the upper area of the museum, Henry then finds a rope which we can then latch down to grab the diamond, and successfully get away. But during this scenario, using a hammer wouldn't be the best choice since it could create a lot of noise and shatter our bodies, to where the guards would then get attracted. But, if you remember rule 2 at the beginning of the video, we're just gonna have to specify this down to its own conduction, and assume that the glass was just very weak instead. Now as we continue on, we then reach a very bumpy road, because Henry then grabs the diamond with ease and walks away to the hallway with his bare hands, making this scene very unrealistic unless you're like Eddie Hall or Stone Cold Steve Austin. Carrying that diamond would just kill you, so realistically there would be nothing we can do here. Unless we reach the rec room area. Filled with wacky and fictional items, we can go ahead and find an item like the Animal Crossing leaf and place it onto the diamond, so we can grab it and escape. But I already know that this is a Gadget Gabe item, and it wouldn't make any sense to use it here, since I've been hating on the guy like the whole time, and most of his stuff wouldn't be here anyway. Although this is a fictional museum, filled with unordinary things and weird technology, I'm not surprised if some of his stuff isn't already in here to help us carry this 2,000-pound diamond. But as we distract the last two guards with another penny from our pockets, we make it outside quietly, where we place the diamond onto the last guard's head and make it out with fortune in our hands. And as we get our successful ending, we get the pathway unseen burglar, and become rich, and run away to paradise. But enough of that one. It is now time for the next episode. After 3 to 4 years of running, we've now been officially captured by the government.
We got him.
And as we're being detained, our duty is to help them infiltrate this big red airship that's run by this evil clan named the Top Hats, which clearly signifies them as a cult-like group that's probably worse than Scientology, since they run all over the world and dominate the Apex games. With us trying to bring them down, our first 4 choices are using an earpiece, becoming a big hamster, using a sticky hand, pause, or grappling like Spider-Man. But as we begin episode 3, it ain't gonna be a walk in the park because the 4 different endings don't make any sense at all, and the items we use as Henry is somehow manageable. So we're gonna have to use different alternatives once again to achieve an ending no matter what. And some of these choices we can easily make as an average Joe, so let's begin with eliminations. With the first one being the sticky hand. Pause! But there's only one word I have to say about this choice, and that is death! Now our next elimination would be the big hamster ball. Because from the big impact itself, we would have already been dead on arrival. Plus, using the laser would contribute to Newton's third law, so BAM! 2 paths have now been eliminated, and now we get our final 2, either being the earpiece or the grappling gun. However we may start this though, both options are very wide open and risky for an individual to somehow achieve. Since using the grappling gun first would give us a major concussion, and waiting there in the fast wind would just take us off, meaning that our only option left is the earpiece. As Charles takes us above the airship and as closest to the fuselage, we must first find some sort of leverage or a gap that we can use to stay on top of the 600-foot long ship. And as we're doing that, we get to use one of the 4 pathways to enter, being the C4, which would be our worst choice, the acid then melting off our legs due to high wind speeds, and the vacuum just not being realistic at all. So that means knocking would be our first course of action, but since our friend Hatchman is guarding it, we would already be dead. So let's begin our first alternative, which is using the force gun on the guard. Because throughout this pathway, we get to see Henry using this item made by the government to help us on this mission. And after pressing the button on our earpiece, we get to use it to launch the guard off and enter inside safely, giving us the next few choices of using a glue bottle, a top hat, or the you get the point. So now it's time to use our second alternative in this section. Because while Henry uses a bottle of glue that he somehow found to scale up and become Spooderman, it's not really possible to do in real life. unless you bereave. Then we ask Charles to hack into their system and reroute the power from that room to the red room. So as the lights turned off, we find a nearby top hat that we can use to disguise ourselves while the room is still pitch black, making our way into the disposal without being seen and seizing out of the air vents to the gapped area. We then have the choice of 4 other items to use, such as Charles, Tails, a metal platform, or a gravity bubble. But since we don't want Charles to do a kamikaze or mess up the airship, we call in another government item and bring in Tails to rescue. And as we get across the gap, we see a top hat with a keycard that accesses the whole airship, so our best action to do here is to perform a quick stealth kill and without bringing any attention, use the keycard to access the records room. With millions of files located in one single area, they probably have the file that talks about an island or some sort of whatever it is, and then we find another top hat with the full criminal record of the clan. So now our best option here is to knock him out and then move on to step 2. A hit and dip. But as we run towards the cargo bay, we have to run down the ventilation first. Due to the many guys with lots of guns and shit like that, we must reroute the power once again to pass the area, and this time we're gonna have to reroute it to the red room. And after we make it out, we use our force gun once again to launch off the 2 remaining top hats and grab a pair of parachutes from the cargo bay and perform one of the best heists known to man. As we fall to the ground safely, we give off the documents to the general and getting the ending GSPI, making this choice the most realistic pathway out of all of them in episode 3. But enough of that, it's time for the final 2 episodes.
Hello, Henry. Welcome to the wall. Some of the most cunning and notorious criminals are kept here, and now we have the infamous Henry Stickmin. You're going to be here for a long time. Grigori, take him. You wait here until cell found.
From breaking into vaults to escaping prison and living a life of crime, nothing's more worse than staying in the complex, also known as the wall. Since the smartest and cunning criminals are captured here, there's no going in or going out at all. But as we've been kidnapped by a Russian warden named Dmitry Petrov, we now basically live here. After 50 years of protecting the wall, life hasn't changed until now. But as we wait carelessly at this transfer cell, let me just say that I took extensive measures to figuring out how we could really escape this place as an average Joe, and wow, we are f***ed. Because this ain't no ordinary prison like how we escaped from last time. This is straight up Helheim from God of War. Due to how cold the conditions are, if you get sick, they'll just lock you up in quarantine, and if you die, they'll just dispose your body, meaning that this complex does not care whatsoever about you or the others here. So realistically speaking, if you somehow end up at this maximum prison for whatever reason, there is no way of getting out. But due to Rule 1 existing, alternatives are back on the table. Meaning that whatever I'm about to say next is probably not accurate to real life and wouldn't be possible to do. But I've looked through many Google searches and history about prisons and complexes to where I could probably run my own prison by now, and read through an article about like Frank Morris escaping Alcatraz to come to my final result of fleeing the complex. So now let's begin our 4 choices of charging in, playing dead, boosting upwards, or waiting for transfer. Alongside a new character named Ellie, who has an unknown past and criminal record that is shown in her database, making her untrustworthy so far, but in the meantime, let's focus on getting out of here alive, with the charge tackle as our first elimination, because this would be our most riskiest choice to choose, and performing this in real life would not only be a death wish, but an unrealistic health concern. So yeah, you see why we couldn't do this? I mean, that's some cool acrobatics. Like, I could give it up to it. That's some cool acrobatic, but like, you see what I mean? Now, with choosing the next couple of options, I know that playing dead would be a failure since no one cares about sick or dead inmates in this prison at all, but we could use this to our advantage because with us fooling the guard already, we could have Ellie using her shackles to hit the guard in the back of the dome and knocking them out for about a few hours. Then, without anyone looking, grab the keys from his pockets and use our mouths to open the sealed cuffs to break them free. After we do that, we use the stool beside us to gain an extra boost when climbing up and opening the hatch, and after that process is done, latch down the ladder and run off to the storage room with Ellie on our side. Continuing on, we now get to the 17th floor with 2 other guards blocking the way through and leading to the outside office. But another thing you'll notice from the first guard on the right is that they're not using any regular spear, but a spear that shoots a high blast laser that kills Henry when going the solo route. So as we go ahead and take him out, we plan ahead and use another alternative where Henry grabs the spear and we make it to the outside office, where we get the 3 options to use the force, use a gravitator, or do a judo throw. But I feel like these options aren't really the best way to make it over the roof since they don't make any sense at all. So we might as well use the next best option, and that's using the different large scale boxes from the storage unit to climb over the wall and past the guard where we trigger off the alarm and sign off the rest of the crew. And as Ellie makes a suggestion of going through the hallway, our best course of action is to use the elevator from the office to avoid any further conflict among the guards and killing us all. With us being at the finish line, Ellie then gets captured by the same guard at the beginning of the game, and now we either get the choice of making a face, or just using the drop near spear and neutralizing the subject, and getting our final choice of either free falling, getting kidnapped, or using a motorbike, which we then grab and use to get away until the warden captures us once again, and Ellie leaving us behind, giving out his final words.
You are going to regret everything.
And after fleeing the complex, we officially get the ending, Convicted Allies. Now, I'm not really saying that this ending would be the most realistic out of all of them, but let me know in the comments below, what do you guys think about my explanation about all this? Because this was a really difficult episode to film, and there was like a lot of research going on in the background, so I just wanted to know, like, what would you guys do if you were in like Henry's situation or whatever? How would you flee the complex? Because this was the hardest to film. And honestly, I just needed a little bit more context about it since there was like a lot of gaps and a lot of, out of context scenes going on. So let me know in the comments below, what would you guys do? And now it's time to begin the final episode. Throughout our journey and accomplishments, we finally made it to the 5th episode of the Henry Stickmin collection. And with our goal so close, we need to figure out which ending is the most realistic out of all of them, and make it to the end. With 16 different endings and 2 of them being realistic, choosing any other pathways would either kill us or take extensive requirements to achieve, and since I don't want to break down each and every one of them, I'm going to state the most obtainable one being Relentless Bounty Hunter and International Rescue Operative, where the plot is Henry taking down the right-hand man and working for the government once again, but this time with a team of operators who meet their demise as we move in. But let's begin the story as we go into the drop zone of the Dogo Bogo jungle located in Brazil and take down the top hats once and for all.
Stability is clear. Stand by for drop.
I hope you don't mind helping us out again. I called ahead and got the all clear from the general. I'm sure you've got a lot of questions. Don't worry, he'll fill you in when you arrive. You'll be dropping in on the outskirts of the Top Hat launch site. We've also got a squad waiting for you when you arrive.
We then get a green light from Charles and parachute down safely without being noticed. As we arrive, we then meet our team and team captain named John Pilkson, who is also known as Frog, and two other specialists named Eel and Turtle. With everybody here, we then receive a live message from the general telling us about our full mission and our team's capability. While the government goes all in, we sneak in silently and find the right-hand man.
Hello.
But now let's determine the best approach, because as we make it to the checkpoint, a target is blocking the entrance with a gun, and with it comes 4 different options with either doing a dance-off, close quarters combat, conversion,
Narwini.
or sneaking in. So now it's time to pull off a Dutch defense,
Working it all out.
where we let one of our teammates handle the situation instead, but from a far range. Since doing conversion doesn't make any sense, we have to use an alternative. But after that's sorted out, we run for cover and make it to the warehouse building. As Eel hacks into their system and finds a location, we go find the right-hand man surrounded by the military, getting to choose our next 4 options, being dance-off, cluster charge, dogpile, or suppressing fire, which we then have to choose to proceed through the building. But as the right-hand man sees us, he instantly takes out our team with one energy blast and pushes us into the ground like we're one of Spider-Man's ops in Spider-Man 3. Like, bro, I am not taking MJ. She is all yours, man. She is all yours. But if you think surviving that isn't possible, then let me show you a clip of Lone Survivor from 2013, and then you get to see what Henry feels like. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I don't think an average Joe could surpass that at all. But can we at least have a moment of silence after our team just got obliterated and killed, thinking they were like Rogue One or something and just sending the Death Star files to the rebels or whatever? But after Henry gets taken down, the right-hand man then proceeds to let us up and gives us a second chance to fight him. Now realistically, we wouldn't be able to get up so quickly after being shoved to the ground and having no chance at all, but since we're not quitters, we go ahead and fight once more, giving us 4 more options to choose from, though they are all unrealistic in their own way, meaning that we have to plan ahead and think about different alternatives to use here to take them out. Starting with the first one being the nano suit, that was used during our escape from the rocket and became a very useful item for going into space and arriving back on Earth, but it didn't state or show any evidence of it being a government item, so that's a clear no. Our next option is surrendering and hoping that a soldier or a military personnel steps in and shoots him, but I don't think you want to mess with the guy that could literally do this. And now we're on to our third option, which is using a combat knife to hit him in his cybernetic eye and temporarily blind him from the side, throwing a clean left hook to his face and beating his ass up. And as we call Charles with the radio comm, we go ahead and bring down the rest of the top hats as well. And yes, most of this video wouldn't be possible without the government giving us some items to help with our journey, but I say this is a win-win anyway since we already made it to the end of the video and I am tired. But overall, we get the ending Master Bounty Hunter, which is the most realistic ending out of all the other ones shown throughout completing the mission. Although there was another ending that could be possible to do, which is the Top Hat Civil Warfare, but I ain't gonna go to much greater detail than this. So I hope y'all enjoyed the video. If you even made it this far, then hi. How you doing? Ever tried eating a burger with no honey mustard? Cause if you haven't, then what are you doing here? Go to McDonald's and get it yourself! But I'd like to say that this was a very fun video to make, and I'd like to break down more indie games such as Cuphead or Undertale. So if you want to see more content like this, then please subscribe. It would really help a poor small YouTuber like me. I'll also leave the game in the description below for y'all wanting to play it, and thanks again for sticking by and watching it. See you guys in the next video.